Am I gonna be in trouble? Like, why am I in trouble for writing my own story? Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Marlo York, for those of you who are new here. I am the self-published author of the young adult dystopian fantasy novel, Blood of Fire. There we go. I just wanted to sit down with you guys on this cold, dreary Friday morning with some hot chocolate and just kind of tell you a little bit of a story, I guess. So I wanted to share with you guys the story of how I became a writer. I was about 8 years old when I first started writing, and when I tell people how long I've been writing for, they usually don't believe me. Because, for one thing, I look younger than I really am, and I also started writing at such a young age. The first thing I wrote was actually a short story, which was a mashup between the Cartoon Network show Ed, Edd n Eddy and the Disney Channel movie The Phantom of the Megaplex. And if you are a 90s kid or a lover of Cartoon Network and or Disney, then you might be familiar with those. What I wrote was a mashup called The Phantom of the Gymnasium, which basically used the cast of Ed, Edd n Eddy and then the storyline of The Phantom of the Megaplex. The villain, or the Phantom of the Gymnasium, was one of my elementary school coaches. Gym class to me was kind of the jocks versus the not athletic kids. And even though I was somewhat athletic in the sense that I was strong and I was fast and I liked playing games and being active and doing sports, I was never a jock. I was never on any sports teams. I didn't like organized sports teams because I didn't like being told what to do. I used my frustration as a kid who didn't like gym class and who didn't always get along with the coach as sort of a prompt to make the gym coach the villain in my story, even though I liked my gym coach as I got older, and really I was only frustrated that I was a little kid who didn't want to play certain sports or wasn't good at them and didn't like being laughed at or ridiculed for not being good at them. So I basically used my frustration to create this story, and I remember when I was first writing it, I was oh so proud of every sentence and every paragraph. Again, I was 8 years old, so it wasn't great, but it was imaginative. That was the thing that always worked to my advantage. Even if my writing wasn't really up to par, I made up for it with my imagination. So as I was writing The Phantom of the Gymnasium, I was just so enraptured by the storyline and what I could do next, and the fact that I could create these imaginary characters, even though they were based off of characters that already existed. I was just so excited that I could make them do what I wanted. You know, every kid loves watching TV and movies, and for me it was a way to actually be in charge of the movie, so to speak, because books are kind of like a movie in your head, right? You know, I would write like maybe one page or one paragraph, and I was just so eager to share it with my mom, and I would read the whole thing for her from like start to finish, and the entire short story is probably only a few handwritten pages long, like on loose leaf paper, but I was just so proud of it and excited to be doing it that I would share it with my mom, and she'd be like, oh, that's so great, blah, 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 you know. She was always encouraging me to write. My mom's also a writer, so my entire life she's always encouraged me to keep writing, and she was actually the one who suggested I transfer colleges from the one that I started at as a baking and pastry arts major to the one that I actually graduated from, where I got a degree in creative writing. And then the next story that I really remember writing actually ended up being a series of short stories. I originally called them Feathered Ends, which didn't really make any sense. And then I think I changed the name to Horse Feathers, which I think was sort of a play on feathering, which is like the hair on a horse's ankle, like around its hooves. I was really into the Saddle Club as a kid. Maybe some of you read the books and maybe watched the TV series. I did both. I loved reading these books. I loved horses as a kid. I still like them a lot, even though I'm not like a horse-obsessed person anymore. I haven't been horseback riding in years. I used those as inspiration to write my next series, Horse Feathers, Feathered Ends, or whatever it ended up being called. Which basically followed these three girls. You know, they would go on these adventures that involved horses, and it was really the first series that I had really fleshed out and written from beginning to end, whereas, as what happens to so many writers, we start projects and then we don't actually finish them. But every time I wrote one of these short stories. I ended up finishing it, and it became a series that was probably like 10, 12, 14 books, short stories, books long. When I was in third grade, I entered one or two of these short stories into the elementary school writing contest. It was really cool because, there were judges who were probably just faculty members, maybe other teachers or people who worked in the front office, and they read the books and then they would judge them, and you could either get first, second, maybe a third place ribbon. I got the book back from my teacher, Mr. Pratt, and he brought me into the hallway, very serious, and he gave me my book with the first place ribbon on it. And he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Did you write this?" And I said, "Yes," because my name was on it, so obviously I'd written it. He said, "All of it?" I said, "Yes, I wrote all of it. It's my story." I was very confused by this because I was like, well, it's obvious. I put my name on it, and my mom has seen me writing it, so yeah, it's my story. And he said, "The judges thought it was so good that they were afraid that you had plagiarized it out of a real children's book." And I said, well, I didn't do that because I'd written it. And I was, obviously scared as like a third grade kid who was just like, am I going to be in trouble? Like, why am I in trouble for writing my own story? And I just remember him just staring me right in the eyes and saying, "Do not stop writing." And to me, I was so like scared, but also really excited that the judges thought that my story was so good that they thought an actual writer, author had written it. Then when he told me don't stop writing, I just thought it was kind of strange, because in my mind, I was never going to stop writing. It was just something I always did and loved to do, and I continued to like it, so I was like, no, this is fun. I'm going to keep doing this. Fast forward X amount of years into the future, I just continued to write things. I wrote a lot of short stories that I never really finished. I started novels and didn't always finish them. You see a pattern here. All throughout elementary school, I was writing and I would get praise for my writing. And I remember being in middle school English, and people were saying, my English teachers were saying, "You write at a high school level, this is so good." And then I got to high school and they were like, "You write at a college level, this is so good." And I liked the praise, obviously, but to me it was just kind of like, well, I've been doing this for quite a few years, so it kind of makes sense that I would be getting better. I started college as a baking and pastry arts major. The college didn't really fit me. I had already taken 2 years at a vocational school studying culinary arts, so it really felt like a step backwards. I ended up transferring to a less expensive college that was also closer to home and was much more arts-based, and I ended up getting my bachelor's in English and creative writing. People assume that because you have a bachelor's in English, all you did was write stories your entire 4 years, but that's not true. I took science classes, I took history, I took math, I took anthropology, I took psychology, I took PE, everything. So by the time I was a senior, most of my classes were creative writing workshops. I was in classes with other students who were also English majors, and so when we would do critiques, it would be really good, and it was just really fun to read other people's writing who were really good writers, and to have good writers reading your writing, and then they could give you very good constructive criticism, and not just, yeah, this is a good story, I guess, I like it, whatever. They really helped you become a better writer through their own interest in your writing and writing in general. I also learned to better critique other people's writing and to just see other people's thought processes and to just talk about writing, and it was a lot of fun. If you feel like taking writing classes, go ahead. I don't feel like it's necessary in order to be a successful writer or author, but if you have the chance, just give it a shot. Go to like a workshop and see if you like talking to other people about writing, and if you feel comfortable having them read your stuff, which is a really good way to warm up to the idea of beta reading and having a critique partner and eventually being published. And so the idea of strangers reading your writing won't be so scary because it can be really intimidating having people read your book for the first time and you don't know if they're gonna even like it or if they're gonna shit all over it. I'm working on the sequel to Blood of Fire, and I'm actually getting into the editing stage. And, when I look back on being an 8-year-old writing out this sort of fan fiction knockoff story, handwritten on loose leaf paper, and I don't even have the story anymore, so I feel kind of bad that I can't go back and read it and, cringe or remember how excited I was to start writing. But when I look back now and think about where I was when I was 8 years old and how excited I was to write and how I'm still excited to write, the difference now is that I actually have a completed novel published. It's on people's bookshelves in their homes, and it's in libraries, and it's in different countries. But it's just interesting to see how far I've come from, this little girl who just did writing as sort of a hobby after school to a self-published author who would love to be, traditionally published perhaps someday, to see my book made into a movie. That would be, that would be something else. But it's just really cool to see how far I've come and how many skills I've gained, and to just really be proud of myself that I stuck with it, and I've always been writing, and I'm going to keep writing as long as I want to and as long as it still interests me. Whether you started your writing journey as a little kid like some people do, or if you first picked up a pen and started writing when you were 50 or 60 something and retired, don't worry about comparing yourself to my story or anyone else's. All our writing journeys are different. We have different skills. We come from different backgrounds. We have different interests. If this is at all inspiring, that's awesome. If it's just a cool little background quirk that you can be like, oh yeah, I started writing as a kid too, then, leave a comment below. Let me know how you started writing. What age were you? Did you just start writing yesterday? And that's cool too if you did. It's not a race by any means. And it's not about comparison. Whenever you started, just keep in mind that you're only competing with yourself and trying to be better than you were yesterday. So I guess that's all I have for this video. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below to let me know what your writing story is like. When did you start writing? What are you working on now? Where do you want your writing journey to progress to? If you want to tell me what sort of path you see yourself going down, let me know in the comments. Until next time, thanks for watching. See you later.